Hey everybody, welcome back to this episode of Think Business Live. I'm looking forward to sitting down with Matthew Lester, president of the Jewish Federation of Metropolitan Detroit, and Dennis Bernard, president of the Jewish Foundation. You guys are a dynamic duo taking great charge with community efforts. I just want to say also, Matt is founder and CEO of Princeton Enterprises, and Dennis is founder and president of Bernard Financial Group. Fellas, sitting here with you is very nostalgic and fun for me because I'm 48. And when I was 30 getting into the real estate business, Matt, I remember you teaching me for hours and hours and hours about the real estate business. And Dennis, you also teaching me about the real estate business right when I first got started, and being somebody that was always showing up at the shop, telling us what inning we were in so we could plan accordingly. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for your guys' time. I know how busy you are. I want to start off by talking about today about the heart of giving. What you guys are doing, you guys are running full-time businesses, you have full-time families, and yet you have something in you that is giving back in such a unbelievable way, and adding really a third and maybe a fourth full-time job to your docket. And so in that spirit, and Matt, maybe we'll start with you. What was the calling to do something of this when it came to taking over the presidency of the Jewish Federation that you found within you and just fulfilling?
So there's a lot there. I mean, I think what ultimately had me decide to take what you described as a full-time job, and it is, was the way that people invested in me, the community leaders that took the time and mentored me. There was something called the Sherman Leadership Program, the Blumenstein Leadership Program, the Grossfeld Program. People in our community make it a point of investing in the younger generation, and that begets a give back. The other thing that I would say, you live by this credo of think big. And another way to think big in business is one thing, but if you're really a big thinker, that by definition to me means that you're thinking beyond just yourself.
Yeah.
And I live by a similar credo. It came from one of our sages, Hillel. It goes like this: if you're not for yourself, who will be? So in business, you have the right to be a self-advocate, and you should be, and you should take an attitude. Why not me? I can do that.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that coin, Hillel teaches us, if I'm only for myself, what am I?
Yeah.
And that basically just says, look, what's it all about? Is it about simply yourself? If it is, what's the meaning of life?
Yeah.
And so obviously we're here for more than just selfish reasons. And so selflessness comes into play for me, and obviously for Dennis and for you. And I think COVID, frankly, has shined a light on that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't call it a silver lining, but perhaps an opportunity and a refocus on priorities, and even in that emphasis on selflessness.
Yeah, I love it. Dennis, how about, thanks for Matt. That was beautiful. Dennis, how about you?
I'm not going after that. Forget it.
That was well said.
That's what I needed. I have to follow some Talmudic teaching. But that actually goes to show why Matt and I are such a good partnership. We come from the same place. Exactly. That there's something bigger than just the individual and ourselves. And we're both grounded, and we have used in other interviews separately. When they came together, we noticed that we see our life and our lifestyle and the way we live it as a three-legged stool. Family, community, and business. And they're all equal to make that, so there's no wobbling. So there's a commitment to all three. And Matt's right. We see this as an honor. We were other people before us. You know what? It's really cliche when people talk about pay things back or to pay it forward and so forth. And it's really a cliche until it becomes real.
Yeah.
And that's when you do it. And that's when that's why sometimes we take cliches or whatever, but there's a lot of meaning to it. We feel the weight of generations before us and the work they've done, and we feel the obligation to pay it forward, and not in a cliche way, but to commit to it so others then can follow in our footsteps. And the best thing for Matt and myself will be 20 years from now, sitting back to see people we mentored, we coached, and getting that same feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction that the people that coached and mentored us, whether it was families, grandparents, fathers, mothers, whether it was village elders, that'll be the feeling we have.
Yeah. Let's talk about, thanks for Dennis. I love that. Let's talk about mentorship for a minute, because both of you mentioned, the people that invested in you, the people that came in front of you. We have changing generations in front of us. And then we have just the world changing. Pre-COVID studies have pointed to, by the year 2030, 85% of the jobs that exist don't exist today. And by the year 2025, 75% of the global workforce will be millennials, and that doesn't include Gen Zs. And so the two of you have a huge role and responsibility to also bring up the younger generations. How are you doing that, and how are you tapping into that? Because I think that's something that every charity all over the world is trying to figure out how to do. Dennis, maybe we'll start with you.
With me?
Yeah.
That's front and center in Federation and Foundation and Matt's and my strategic plan is how to grow the expression Matt uses quite a bit is how to grow the tent. And a lot of that just isn't linear. It's also vertical. Yeah. When it comes to age. And we're focusing, we're very fortunate. We have a great next gen program here. We have a lot of programs to get people involved, a lot of entry levels, but we're taking a hard look at, we've been very focused historically on entry level points at Federation and in the community. Now we need to focus a little more as once we've done that entry level and gotten people involved, how do we grow them? Where do we build them? Find the opportunities. Historically, our community is blessed. We have so many wonderful people who want to give their time and their talent. And what happens is every so often management gets lazy. This is coming into and I guarantee you, John, knowing you and how astute you are, you've coached this as a business coach. Management gets lazy and keeps asking the same people to do different jobs.
Yeah, 100%.
They know they can do it. So Matt and I are very focused on changing that mentality in Federation and Foundation. We want to keep those that have been historically involved, done a great job involved, but we want to make sure that younger, newer people can bring newer ideas, newer ways to do things, but also get them involved. The more involved they become, the more ownership they have, the more involvement they have. Matt, where are you on this?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing on that, Dennis. I love the way you pointed out, and I've done a lot with Federation through the years, but I love how you pointed out just the entry point and then the continuum of how to grow someone. And I think, and I'll just share, I called Matt, and Matt and I have been talking over the last couple of weeks that I wanted to get involved. And Matt really spent a lot of time trying to customize something that would be the right fit for me, right? And something where I could really kind of jump in and dive in, because I think the entry point only works when someone is in the right seat, going back to management and people and business and things of that nature. So I love what you shared. Matt, what are your thoughts?
So, and you're both spot on in my opinion, and mentorship of young people is critical. I mentioned that I was the beneficiary of that. And so I feel a tremendous sense of responsibility to give back in that regard. I think the key, regardless of what the future looks like, and even though we're going to be in a changing world for sure, I think our American way will continue. I think there will be opportunities for creativity and entrepreneurship. And so it's just a matter of guiding people, hopefully very similarly to what we've been experiencing in the past. But I think it starts with setting an example.
Yeah.
And you cannot be a mentor, you cannot be a leader, you cannot help others unless you are setting the right example and they can point to that. Walk the walk, not just talk the talk. I think it follows from there with empowerment, true empowerment of other people, not simply lecturing them, not simply telling people what to do, but to actually let them demonstrate a skill set and a passion. And I think you also have to listen. If I did anything right with respect to our conversation the last couple of weeks, when you said to me that you wanted to get more involved in federation, it was listening and then thinking, how can we put you or anybody else in a position where passion intersects with talent, and when you do that, or passion intersects with need. But passion is the key part to it. Yeah. Everybody wants to put their stamp on things, and people bring different skill sets and different priorities, and you have to try and be accommodative to that. And I think if you do those kinds of things, set the example, empower, listen, and then look for what people are passionate about, you're on the track in terms of being a mentor to whether it be young people or anybody else.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Let me ask you guys a question. I love everything that you're talking about right now. I want to talk about just giving in general. Many people are in need right now because of COVID. The studies are pointing to, 50 million people across the country are, don't have enough food to put on their table. Yet giving, and even though people have been very hurt this year because of COVID, studies show that the first half of 2020, giving is actually up 7.5%. And that makes my heart feel good. But giving today, I think, looks differently than it did when we were growing up or when I was growing up. It looks differently than it did 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and even 9 months ago. And so what does giving today look like, right? To me, I feel like every dollar counts. And I just want to kind of, for the people listening who can only afford maybe a $5 donation or to make a phone call or, define giving today. Dennis, let's start with you. Or Matt, go ahead. Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
Look, you hit the nail on the head. There are infinite ways to be charitable and to give. I think both Dennis and I feel very blessed that we've achieved a certain amount of business success so that we can give financially to really countless causes. But giving, in that regard, let's stay on financial for a minute. It's amazing, but charitable giving is up dramatically. Yeah. I think you mentioned 7%, and that just shows the heart and soul and the character of the people in this community and people in this country. But giving has changed, and it is what it needs to be is collaborative. Yeah. Okay, it needs to be collaborative as opposed to people being duplicative or redundant in terms of what they're doing. They're just, we have limited resources as a community and as a nation. And so it needs to be collaborative and it needs to be strategic. And we're learning, frankly, in terms of giving from some of the great philanthropists in this country. And we would know those kinds of names, the Bill Gates and other giant foundations and even smaller foundations. And if you look at what they're doing, they are incredibly strategic about how they are giving. They're doing the research and the homework first, okay? And then they're deploying their assets where they're most needed. But you can take it all the way to the other spectrum. And there are, you do not need to be rich or a millionaire or a foundation to have an impact and to be a giver. You can give of your time. You can give of resources, however big or small. And we've seen campaigns, financial campaigns, where the $5 or the $20 has made a huge difference. The GoFundMe kinds of efforts. Perhaps it was the reason why Barack Obama won the presidency.
Yeah.
in terms from a fundraising standpoint. And so really the key is to give a capacity gift in terms of financial and give capacity in terms of time. I loved David Hermelin, who was a mentor for both Dennis and myself, the way that he put it. He used to say, give, the classic line is give till it hurts a little bit. He flipped it on its head and said, give till it really feels good. Give till it really feels good. And I think that that's true financially, whatever capacity is for you, or of your time. Give till you really feel like you are giving something and making a difference.
Yeah, I love it.
Right. Let me just add, and again, always tough to follow, Matt. But giving's a two-way street. It's not about what the money or where it goes can do, and I'll get to that in a second. It's also what it does for yourself. Again, this comes back to one of our opening discussions of why Matt or I are involved. Matt and I are not special. Most people want to be part of something greater. So that's their commitment, whether they have the time or the money or the resources. They, as long as to Matt's point, they give to their capacity, what time they might have or what money they have. That's a fulfilling, and that's what separates, makes us human. That's the human aspect. So it's a two-way street. So it's also an opportunity for people to feel good that they're part of something greater. And in this case, fighting COVID and everything that quarantines and being alone and stress and loss adds to it.
Yeah.
And that's why the size doesn't matter. But the flip side then is in our case, for Federation and Foundation, to compete, we have to make sure that we're committed, that the money that we're given, that we use it wisely, we spend it well, we do it in the collaborative ways that Matt mentioned, we do it strategically, so that the ways and how we used to give it and divide it up 10 years ago are no longer applicable. Mm-hmm. We allocate differently just than in 5 years ago. And going forward, we're constantly looking for what the needs are, best ways. Who can we partner with? Federation years ago used to do it all as a standalone. Now, Matt and I were also chairs of the Jewish community's COVID emergency. We raised this money for relief, and we saw agencies work together in a collaborative fashion that this community's never seen. It was incredible. They've never seen anything like it. It was great. It was efficient. It was strategic. It was collaborative. It was all the buzzwords that we like to use, but it really worked. Yeah. And we got more money, more efficiently, less overhead, better distributed to help people in certain ways that they could help themselves. So it's a commitment on who's collecting and raising money.
Yeah.
That we do it in a smart, collaborative way, and that will get people to feel comfortable to give more and again.
I love it. I mean, everything you both are saying resonates with me on such a deep level. I want to talk a little bit about time. We all have 24 hours in a day, 1,440 minutes, yet how we allocate it, how we plan for it. I'm big into time management. I do a lot of coaching in that world, but I want to know what the type of time you take to ground yourselves, because I think you are family men, you are community men, you are businessmen. What do you do to stay grounded so you can put yourself first, so you bring your best self to each of the three pieces of the stool, Dennis?
That's a personal question, which is great. And Matt and I are spending 3-4 hours a day on this, and while at the same time we run our businesses and our families and community, what grounds me is the greatest pleasure that I have that keeps me grounded. I have 3 grown children who call and text me every day, and I take a moment out just to chat with my grown children wherever they are, whenever they're around. I've got a daughter-in-law that I've got now up to 3 times a week, but I'm going to get her to 7 days, just like I got everyone else. But we're getting there. And the great thing about talking with your children who are your best friends, they also remind you of your foibles and mistakes and your human aspects. So it humanizes you. It reminds you you're not always right in only a way that a loving family member can do it.
Yeah.
And of course, it goes without saying, anybody who knows me, my better two-thirds, my amazing bride Hadass, we're best friends. A lot of people say that, but anybody who knows us knows that we are. And by interacting with her every day and my children, it keeps me centered and focused and happy and feeling good.
Yeah.
And reminded that I'm wrong rather frequently.
Matt, how about you? Thanks for that, Dennis. I love that.
So first of all, can you tell that Dennis and I are solid partners?
Yeah, no, it's so obvious. Yeah.
I know where he's coming from, and yet I love to listen to him because I learn from him every single day. It's really quite a nice partnership. But time, look, we're in a situation, especially now, there just isn't enough time. Okay, so that's the first thing. You have to accept that reality is that you're not going to be able to do everything. Okay, it helps to be a really good delegator. Okay, it helps to be honest with yourself that time pressures are what they are, and accept the fact that there's only certain things or certain amount that you can do. I think both Dennis and I live in a world today where we are either plugged in or unplugged. One or the other, and we're mostly plugged in, okay. But
so
that
true,
unplugging,
so true.
But that unplugging becomes incredibly important. What Dennis and I have, and I wish it for everybody, okay, is that when we are plugged in, whether it be business or whether it be community, we are loving it, okay. And if you don't have that in life, if you don't have that in a career, in a job, in a profession, you ought to change. You ought to find it. I look at you. We had those meetings. I used to say to you, John, don't make this move to coach or whatever, or author or whatever, because you were so damn good as a real estate agent. And I said, you're just going to kill it. What I didn't know then that I know now is that you would have been good at anything. And the reality is I was wrong. You were right. You followed a passion. So time management becomes a much easier thing if when you're plugged in, you are pursuing something that is truly meaningful and passionate for you. Yeah. In terms of being unplugged, that is critically important. And both Dennis and I unplug by gravitating just naturally towards our family. And you're talking to, and Dennis Bernard, probably the role model, as far as I'm concerned, and for many of us, in terms of husband and in terms of parent. I model him and copy him wherever I can. But family is super important. And I think the other thing for me, and I didn't necessarily know it growing up or until recently, is anything outdoors, anything that's nature. Spending time on my farm, skiing, hiking, being outside gives you a real sense in nature, gives you a real sense of perspective, your little position, your little dot in the universe. And maybe even it sounds a little corny or whatever, our Creator's majesty, okay? And the beauty of it, and to take it in, smell the roses, as the expression goes. Yeah. And you can find that those little chunks of time allow you to hit reset and allow you to recharge and get yourself plugged back in. Yeah.
But Matt, that goes to the point that you made, which is just so spot on, right on, is when you get outside. And we both like to be outside, and both have to like to work out and ski or nature or whatever, or be on the water. That's the one time we get to unplug.
Yeah.
And we have such a good partnership. And a lot of it is also the partnership, is the fact that that when we are unplugged, that we constantly, Matt, you got this one. Dennis, you got this one. We'll do this one together. And we have full trust in each other. And in the past, there might have been a little difference in the co-presidents of Federation and Foundation of how they would work together. But we have such trust for each other. And then the one cute little thing is, maybe it's because of my marriage, maybe because of the relationship, but when my phone goes off at 10:30 at night and I suddenly just jump up and run into the other room to talk, my lovely bride doesn't worry about who that is or who I'm talking to. She knows at 10, from 10 to 11:30, that's Matt and myself.
That's
going
great.
back and forth, texting, talking.
Until she says that's
I'm
enough.
not sure if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
Until she says that's enough. He's upset you enough for the night. And of course, both of us do. We do a lot of talking all hours of the day, including at night. One thing that I think we've learned is sleep on it sometimes too is important thing. But the last thing that I would say, John, about time, there's a saying people say, if you want something done, ask a busy person, right? Why do people say that? And why is that infinitely true? It's because those people are purposeful in anything that they do. Okay, that's the key, I think, ultimately to time management, is to not have those days or those half a days where you say, geez, what did I do today? Nothing. Or how did this day get away from me? And we all have those days. I mean, it's unavoidable. But the trick is to try and make your day, whether it's even an unplugged moment, make it purposeful, make it try to accomplish what it is that you're setting out to do, as opposed to just saying, why am I going through the motions? Why am I, how did that day get away from me? Be purposeful.
I love it. I love everything you guys are saying. And one of the things that I think is that I just want to kind of highlight is how you're talking about the importance of purpose and being in alignment. When you're in alignment with what you do, I'm a big believer, you can take action and time just kind of flows through you. When there's people that are in an adjustment period, it's hard to get back into alignment. It's great watching the two of you individually and collectively in alignment with such important roles when it comes to growing the Federation. And also, I just want to point out, the work that you do is at such a high frequency and at such a high vibration. Most of the world statistically vibrates at a 87% of the world vibrate at a certain frequency, and it's the 13% that vibrate at a higher frequency that we need to kind of pull up the rest of the world. And you guys are doing that. And so I'm very grateful for that. I do want to spend a minute talking about how you had to adapt in business since COVID hit. And so maybe in a couple sentences, how have you, as very successful businessmen, and had to adapt your businesses, these last couple months? Matt, maybe we'll start with you.
So, the first secret to it is nobody saw COVID coming. Okay, nobody saw it, and yet what you do in business is, if you're doing it right, is you somehow prepare yourself for the unexpected. And you couldn't, I don't know anybody who quote unquote did that for COVID per se, but you build an organization. And that's what I've done, and Dennis has done the same thing. And so the adapting becomes somewhat natural and somewhat easy, much easier. And make no mistake, COVID has created hardships for all of us. So in some cases, hardships that we'll be living with potentially for years. And in some cases, hardships that we may not even be completely aware of at this point. But in my case, I was able to lean hard on people who I knew were hardworking and dedicated, but I had no idea the extent to which their loyalty and love for this organization called Princeton is. And so I was forced to lean on them. That was the strategy that I chose. You're talking about senior leadership, of which I have an amazing group, all the way down the line. and virtually to a person, they came through well beyond my expectations.
Right.
At the same time, just to tell you, at the same time, it forces you to have a sensitivity that not everybody, while virtually everybody could do that, not everybody could.
Yeah.
And that's not a criticism of them. If you're a good leader, you have to recognize that, and you have to adapt to those people's needs and abilities.
Yeah, that's well said. That's well said. Dennis, how about you?
For second time, Matt's right on. We both were very fortunate to have built, mature, at the same time, young and excited organizations. So we had senior leadership, we had people in place, we had structure and whatever in place. And I had to lean more on my senior leadership. What helped tremendously was my son, after 5 years in New York, coming back and joining us almost 2 years ago. So he's been great. But everybody on my team has stepped up. And again, family has stepped up. They got to pick up some of the personal side or things that go on in family activities, and everybody step up. And then Matt and I just had to accept that we can't be the control freaks in our businesses. So it's been a maturing process of ourselves, that our community, that we have to give greater time to our community time and effort. And that means we have to get comfortable with our teams following the path we want them to follow, but doing it their way, and not necessarily 100% the way we would have done it. The outcome was the same, and that's also been, as everything, it's also been a blessing to see my team grow and blossom a little bit. Got to bite my tongue a few times. But then I see that they come out stronger and better, and I scratch my head and say, you know what? Maybe we should have done that a lot before.
It's great. It's great. I love everything you guys have shared today. I have one last question for each of you. Dennis, we'll start with you. We've talked a lot about mentorship today, and we've talked a lot about giving back and honoring those in front of us who have pioneered and led the way and done something, whether they do it or not, to plant a seed in us that wants us to be better and do better. And so what's the number one best piece of advice a mentor has ever given you, Dennis?
Wow. The best piece of advice on such a huge question: always let your partner go first. That would have been, so you have more time, more time to think. Don't be afraid to say what you think. Don't be afraid to say what you think, and don't be afraid to do what you feel.
Yeah. That's a great one. I love that. And it gives me chills because it takes a lot of courage and a lot of work to actually listen and then implement and execute that into your life. Yeah, that's beautiful. Matt, how about you?
Yep.
Oh, wait, hold on. Sorry, Matt.
One today. Failure. Remember that failure is often a step towards success.
Right.
Okay. Don't let failure take you down. Dust yourself off and move on.
Yeah. Matt, Dennis, I can't think I loved everything you both said today. Hit me right in my heart. It resonates with everything that I believe in. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show. I just want to highlight a couple things. The two of you individually and together are such a dynamic duo. You can tell just by the energy of your interaction, but you really highlight, you can say and then you can do. And by your actions of selflessness and mentorship and your partnership, your giving, your commitment, but most of all, your giving hearts, and the way that you're able to just put your hearts out there is great. And it inspires so many people. I'm a big believer that we're all responsible for the energy that we bring into the room, and that compounds in a very positive way. In a world that is very, has a lot of dark patches right now, we need a lot of light. And the two of you bring a lot of light into the world and raise people up. So I appreciate you taking time out of your, I know, extremely busy schedules. But thank you for being on this podcast today. And tell people where they can connect with the Federation or the Foundation.
So jewishfederation.org is how they can connect. We're easily, just Google it and they can connect. We'll get you plugged in. Let me just say that I thoroughly enjoyed it. Always enjoyed being with Dennis. Thoroughly enjoyed being with you, John, as I always do.
Thank you.
And it was really worthwhile. And I hope we had a little bit of impact and a little bit of inspiration for your audience.
Yeah. Matt, thank you very much.
Once again, hold on. Once again, I got to echo what my dear partner said. Exactly. It was fun. Matt and I had a lot of fun doing this. And John, you're providing a huge service at a very difficult time.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you both. I'm really grateful for both of you guys. Stay on for just a minute when we end the show. But I appreciate you guys both, and thank you for everything that you're doing. And if anybody needs to get a hold of Matt or Dennis, they can through the jewishfederation.org. For those of you who were inspired today by this talk, feel free to share it with whoever could also be inspired. Thanks, everybody.